right. Hey, everybody. Let me share my screen. So what we're doing today is sharing a little bit of tips. We know that some of our family, friends, just people on social media have been sharing how, you know, this is an uncertain time that we're in. I think we've done a pretty good job of being positive and just offering solutions for people. But we've heard all sorts of cases from people who are fully able to work from home without a problem. Nothing's really affected. You know, their companies are able to just let them continue as usual. And for some families, that's not the case. It's either they get half the pay, a pay cut, or completely, like, there's nothing you can do. The industry you're in cannot pay for you to just be at home during this uncertain time. So we wanted to share some tips. You know, as of now, the quarantine is in effect for another 2 weeks. So hopefully that it doesn't extend past that. But here are a couple of tips that we wanted to share. Anything to add to that?
I mean, you kind of moved on, but that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, and we'll start off and kind of add in before I get into this main point, the first point, sorry. Just one of the things is, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty, but, and I don't know those that watched, but we talked a lot about having a game plan and make sure that if you're on the right track, there's very few things that could deter you from your plan. And that's kind of where we want to go with this. It's kind of just give people a little bit more of an idea to develop things, because guess what? You know, there's probably going to be something else that's going to disrupt your life, whether it's now or later in life. And it's better to be kind of prepared than to like wait for things and be reactionary.
Yeah, this was so unprecedented. Like, nobody planned for this to happen, right? It was unprecedented. And like, how do we plan ahead in case it happens again, which doesn't seem very unlikely now that we know we can shut down a whole state, or, you know.
Yeah, like this sets the precedent for it to happen again. And, you know, it's COVID-19 today, but, you know, what if it morphs into something else? You know, we just don't know. So I think it sets up the parameters to, you know, take action now. So if there's something like this happens, you know, we know what to do.
Yeah, we can be as responsible as possible, and yeah, take matters into our own hands, do what we can control. So the first step, or the first tip I should say, is really to budget your non-essentials. So now would be a good time. We're big fans of budgeting and planning ahead. Take a look at what your weekly spending habits are. Maybe you eat out a lot. Maybe you don't have like a grocery list that you set together either by yourself or with your spouse. Maybe you get coffee every day. I mean, thankfully a lot of these places are closed, but I think it's a good time just to look at, you know, am I getting my nails done every week? Am I don't know, randomly shopping for things that really don't fit into my budget right now? How can I cut back in a time where it's really, I'm not getting paid, I don't have the resources to make those kind of expenses. So I think it's a good time to stop and reflect and just look at your spending habits and see what makes sense and what doesn't. That's a really basic first tip.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Just, I think it's a good time to, again, reassess what's currently happening. Because guess what? What businesses are doing right now, they're all taking inventory of what are we spending on? Do we really need it right now? Because it's not just us, like as couples, it's these companies, like, you know, all these big corporations that are not getting the money they're in, the restaurants, all these companies are doing the same thing. They're taking inventory of what they have. And it's just a great business practice. And you don't even have to be in business. Your house is technically a business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, for us is Daisy and Nazi Corporation. Like, you know, like we both bring in income. So now we're in a place where, like, all right, you know, even for me now I have to operate a lot remotely and do these things, which is fine. But it forces us to kind of start adjusting and seeing, all right, do we really need this? And we're not spending now as much money on gas. So now, you know, those things, because we're not driving as much. So, you know, just kind of taking those things into consideration and using that to kind of make sure that you're not losing the essentials.
For sure. I love that concept of like treating your house as a business, because if you do have income coming in, which we all do to live in this country, you want to make sure you treat it as a place of operation, you know what's going out, you know what's coming in, you know how it's being distributed, you know what's essential, you know what's not essential, you know your play money. I mean, these are all things that a smart business takes into consideration. There's no reason you and your family can't get together now and see how you can do that in your own home.
Yeah, and one of the things is like understanding that you don't want this to be a time where it pushes you back 3 4 months from your goals because you didn't plan. Like, try to do everything else before it gets to that point. If you're in a place where you have to resort to like credit cards, then obviously if you could avoid that, that'd be great. But if you can't, start with these non-essentials.
Yeah, for sure. And here is our tip number 2. So I know you just mentioned credit cards. We're big Dave Ramsey fans. I know we mention that a lot in the talks that we do, but he talks about using an emergency fund. And what that is essentially, when you're starting off, it's the first step. It's saving $1,000 for an emergency. Now, what is not an emergency? Like, oh, I got to pay my Netflix, or I got to pay, I don't know. These things are not emergencies. What he considers your essentials are food, utilities, shelter, and transportation. Those are your 4 walls. So anything beyond that is not an emergency. If you need to tap into your $1,000 emergency fund to get by and pay for these things, now would be a good time to do that. And then just know your next step is to replenish that emergency fund before you move forward with anything else. So this is what would be something that could avoid getting you into credit card debt, if that's the case. But again, if you don't have that in place and you have to resort to credit cards, I mean, we got to do what we got to do to survive, right?
Seriously. Yeah, and obviously, follow Dave Ramsey concept. That's $1,000, but he actually pushes for you to have 3 months worth of 3 to 6 months worth of income reserved on the side. So that's really the goal. But if you're on the lower means, you got to do what you need to do. Again, you might have to. That's why it's so important to do step 1, because then you at least see what's important, what's not. Then if you need to go into the reserves or things, then you kind of start addressing that as that situation arises. But understand that ultimately any plan should always have a little back. I'm not saying all of your money should go to this, but you just have a little pocket just in case things like this come up, or unfortunate situations.
Or anything. Like if everything was fine and dandy and your tire blew out, the last thing you would want to do is take out the plastic for it. Like, you want to tap into something that's on the reserve that you never see. It's not your day-to-day. It's not in your day-to-day bank account where it's so accessible that you can just clean it out, but it's for emergencies. So this is a good time, again, to back that up, especially if it's compromising your transportation, like your gas, or you needed an oil change during this couple of weeks, or you need food. I mean, by all means, this would be a good time to use that fund. Let's see, number 3. So I know, again, we've just gone down 1 week. We're entering the 2nd week, but let's look at the months ahead. Maybe March is okay and you've already taken care of your bills. We're closer to the end of the month. But unfortunately, this is going to snowball into April and possibly May. We don't really know what that's going to look like, but how can we get ahead of our expenses? How can we look at what that really is going to mean for us and in your home? So there's such a thing as budgeting for the now, but also for the next month, maybe 2 months ahead.
Mm-hmm. And that's going to look obviously different for every situation. Again, it all starts with like step 1, right? You start seeing what inventory and even looking at it from a company standpoint, right? Like, let's say it's Ozzy Corporation and Daisy Corporation. We all make up the Alonzo Corporation, right? So now we're looking at, all right, what percentages we bring in. And then if we know that, hey, I'm not working as many hours, now they cut me down, then we know we've already lost 20% of our income. We got to find ways to kind of make that up elsewhere. So it starts with the planning and making sure that nothing catches you by surprise. And, you might have that, the license sticker, things come up. So kind of planning those things ahead. That way, at least from a anxiety standpoint, it doesn't really stress you out. So when it comes, you at least know what's coming and you're not stressed out. Because the last thing you want to do is, now you're without maybe reduced pay or whatever the case may be, and now you're, stressed out. Like, that's not a good combination.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not a scientist, but I'm sure that stress and all these things cause you to get more sick. And this
No, they
But
really do. They affect our health, and you got all sorts of hormones that are actually lowering your immune system the more stressed that you are. So again, I'm a huge planner. I love to plan things out. So hopefully this is something you can just get together with your spouse, or even if you're by yourself in the home and you want to just look at what's ahead, just look at your calendar. Maybe some events were canceled, maybe you had birthday parties or etc. But there are maybe I know for us, like our son had to be registered for T-ball, just things that just kind of crept up on us, like it's spring and these are things we have to plan for. So look at your schedule. Kids are going to be out of school soon. Again, we don't know how long this is going to affect us, but we do know we're in the middle of it. So April for sure is going to be affected, possibly May. See how you can get ahead in your budget. And then tip number 4 was pretty much what my husband was talking about. How can we be proactive? How can we stay ahead of that dip that we're all going to feel? If you're at home and you're not getting paid and you're just kind of hanging out and looking for things to do, learn a new skill, read a good book. I know for us, we have about 14 or 15 licensed agents that do exactly what we do, and which is offering financial resources to families. So this is a great time for you to get licensed if you're just at home, since a lot of the stuff you can do for learning this material, you can do from your own home. So I think it'll ease up a lot of those fears.
yeah, and it's learning new skills, getting licensed, and even just taking and I put, I guess it should have been number 4, should have been first, take control. Like take control of your current situation and be like, all right, this is where I'm at. um, is a good time to reflect to see if that's where you want to be for the next 20, 30 years. Like it's really important to take the time to be proactive and be like, you know what, uh, I like it. Maybe I want to add another stream of income, because ultimately, if you had multiple streams of income, you know, a situation like this wouldn't really be as affected because you had money coming in from different places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what one of the things we try to teach and coach people on is like, hey, find ways that use your skill set or learn a new skill set. Maybe it's not something you're used to, but I know for us, like one of the things, coming from a teaching background, going into the financial space, it was completely different field. But when I sat down and looked at it, it was just literally learning something new. It's like learning how to ride a bike. Like I didn't know anything about it. Maybe a few times you fell off and kind of scraped your knee, but over time you master it, and you master the skill. So now you get licensed, and now you're in a place where you could make money on your own. So
Yeah, and you get to control your schedule. You get to control how much of it, like my husband said, is coming in. I mean, it does give you a peace of mind knowing that your primary income isn't the only income. Like you can do something about it. If that stream of income is like a water faucet, it gets shut off completely and you have no control, you still have some other tools in your belt to play with. So yeah, take control, be proactive, see what you can do in the situation. A lot of things right now are out of our control, but I
mhm.
think this is definitely a powerful one
Yeah,
to keep in mind.
and and I think I'm a big believer in the underdog and things that happen, right? I think right now you're in a place where you could really make a different decision, because if you take action when everybody else is laying low, you're going to set yourself apart from everybody. And you might think it's something small, but trust me, it's over time that is going to be a huge difference, because really, if you look at successful people, they took action when probably they shouldn't have. And this is probably a time when you could probably take on a new skill, learn a new trade.
Mhm.
And if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to reach out and we could talk a
Yeah,
little
reach
more.
out to us for sure. One of my favorite books on this subject is from Darren Hardy. It's called The Compound Effect, and it talks about the same thing, how little steps over time make such a big difference. And yeah, a lot of people are just kind of hanging back, and this is a good time to
Yeah,
kind of lean in and do something
and
more
take
about
control.
it. And then lastly, if nothing else makes sense, ask for help. I've seen a lot of really great like community resources coming together online. And I had a friend who posted, she was out of diapers, and like 100 people commented like, what size are you? They're just happy to help. So there's no shame in asking for help if you're really in a desperate situation. I know our church has like a food pantry. They're so good in the world. We
Mhm.
we definitely are available to give resources if we have them. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, ultimately, I think for the most part, there's a lot of negative Nancy's out there, but I, I'm I'd like to believe that most people still have a good heart, a good
Yeah.
place, and then if they're asked to help out, most people will. So, maybe if you don't need help, maybe you could be the one that seeks and helps out others too. This is our time to shine as humanity and impart our time, because this is a adverse time, but I think we could react in a positive way.
Yeah, and we're all in it together. So don't hoard the toilet paper if you don't have to. Share it. No, but for real, feel free to ask for help. And then overall, we're here to serve. This whole financial space and strategizing for a better future is something we're really passionate about. This just happens to be a time where it's so exemplified because people are losing out on their income, and it's not their fault. So we're here to answer any questions, and we're happy to help.
And it's what is it? They call it the silent enemy or something. I don't know, something like that. And I think a lot of times, I'm a big believer in always being in a positive state of mind, because if you're in a good place mentally, spiritually, and at home, none of this is really going to affect you as much as anybody else. So it starts with really us taking control. And I was reading actually The Richest Man in Babylon. I'm reading it again, but it says something that people think the wealth is not in somebody's purse. People think of like wealth and possessions of somebody's purse. It's really what you have inside of what you're able to do and how you're able to create money, be a blessing to others, and all this in place. Like, continue to serve, continue to help people, and that's what we're here to do as well. That's really where our heart is, and hope that kind of shines out in all this.
For sure. We hope you're all keeping a positive attitude during this time. I know we are. We're enjoying our time at home. So until next time, thanks for joining. Let's see.